Long distance is difficult. Some people are going through this successfully, some people have huge difficulties. But I had the best professor in the world. Let me tell you about him. Believe me, you wouldn't expect what he would do during our lectures. Hello, my beautiful stars. And what are we having for today? Today's menu is Tinder or Kijiji to find a job. Absolutely different perspective, absolutely different use for something we've been using for a while, and I do have success cases. So let's see how it goes. Long distance. It's sometimes very difficult. Not everyone can do it. We sometimes underestimate ourselves, thinking that it's much easier than it is. I'm not talking about relationship. I'm talking about long distance and short distance race in life. This is something our professor at the university was talking while discussing and telling us about the students, and I'm gonna tell you about that a little bit later. You will like it and you will try to see who you are in this life. It's really very helpful methodology. And culture matters. That was actually the slogan of one of the very cool store in Shanghai, but that was also the phrase that my friend absolutely agrees with, and I will tell you why and why culture really matters. She was an immigrant. She came to that country full of hopes, aspirations, knowing that she has a nice education. That's why she's definitely gonna achieve a lot. Well, she, he, them, you can substitute it. The story is always the same. Every immigrant to Canada definitely got a little frustrated if they came to this country, I would say, in the past 2 to 3 years, because if it's in the past, probably a paradise for immigrants, these days it's something very difficult. Because even the most qualified ones, even the ones with very high education, with lots of experience here, sometimes cannot even get permanent residency. And of course, being an immigrant, what you always need first, you always need to get a job to survive. And that's where all the game and fun begins. Especially in Canada, even locals right now have difficulty finding a job, let alone some alien coming from other country. If you have experience in other country, probably still relatively bad, but if you don't have neither education nor experience from either country, that's gonna be tough. But Canada is not the only one. And we all know that last year was a huge disaster for Chinese college graduates because there was a huge unemployment rate and the stats were actually stopped being displayed, so people couldn't see the stats, which basically displayed how horrible the situation was in general. We are talking about people who actually studied majors, who are knowledgeable in certain spheres. And then I came across this interesting trend on Chinese internet. Turns out people were using Tinder not for what you're thinking about. They were using Tinder to find a job because basically you can actually use a lot of filters to sort out people in certain spheres, maybe certain levels in their careers, and that's what people did. They basically were using this dating app to just network. Because LinkedIn coffee chats are already not cool enough. Everyone is doing it. It's so saturated. You have to use your creativity in this world because it seems no matter what sphere you go, every sphere seems oversaturated. Like creators, lots of creators, software engineers, lots of software engineers, lawyers, millions of lawyers. It's like if you started early enough, you probably got the sweet spot, but if you start from scratch right now, it's definitely much more difficult because the market has a lot of everything. And how to stand out? Well, you either have to be like literally the best of the best, but sometimes it's also not the key because you also would have to have some luck and other factors. But networking is crucial when looking for a job, and that's why people in China were using this beautiful, interesting app to find people in certain spheres, to meet with them, to talk to them, to share that they had difficulties while looking for a job, if that person could actually give some advice. And that was a thing. That's not the end, guys, because recently I met with my circle of Ukrainian friends and we were discussing different things, how we got accustomed and adjusted to this country. I heard a mesmerizing story, how a girl was looking for an apartment on Kijiji. Some people love Kijiji, some people are afraid of this website. And I think I am the one who doesn't trust this website in general, but I do know that some people actually find apartments there, which is great. And my friend was doing that. She was discussing already the progress with the apartment, and somehow it happened that discussion went in a different direction. Somehow the girl mentioned that she was working in marketing, and the owner of the apartment actually shared that he was looking for people in that sphere, and that's when the discussion about apartment actually ended because the girl was interested more in the job, and you know what, she got it. She got the job and she still works there, and she's switching to different positions, growing within the company, and it actually worked. Let's be honest, of course this is also luck, this is destiny, because I think very often when you are really looking for something, when you dedicate your time, your effort, your energy, you will eventually come across this chance. It can come from different channels, but it is the result of that long search. Nothing comes just out of nowhere, that's for sure. What I do appreciate is this creative approach, thinking outside the box, trying to use the tools you have and actually getting to the goals you have. That's amazing, guys. Well, you can try. Tell me if it worked or if it didn't, or tell me if you actually think this is a horrible idea. Long distance is difficult. Some people are going through this successfully. Some people have huge difficulties. But I had the best professor in the world. Let me tell you about him. Believe me, you wouldn't expect what he would do during our lectures. We had this linguistics course that was actually about languages in general. So we didn't study any language in specific. Like, it was mostly about the laws in different families of languages, or the laws of pronunciation, tendencies in different regions, or how dialects would appear. And the professor was very knowledgeable. He was the oldest professor within our university. The university is also one of the oldest in Ukraine, so that meant a lot. By the way, he found the key to master all the languages in the world, and the only one that made a difficulty for him was Chinese. Mandarin Chinese. He was one of the oldest, and he was of course one of the most revered, because actually if you open his book, it was extremely interesting. The tendencies, the laws, I bet even the professors of linguistics in other countries would be really impressed. So that was a privilege. That was a privilege to attend the classes. There were certain rules and certain attitudes of the professor that many people may think questionable. For example, of course, no food, that's like for sure. But also he didn't like the water bottles to be on the table. So that was also a no for him. And of course, if you are late for class, you will not be allowed to enter it. And the attendance, of course, was taken. And usually not every class, so it's like a lottery. You would actually never know when the attendance would be taken, but missed class would mean a lot, because he actually shared a lot of information that wasn't anywhere else. So if you miss the class, you either need to get some notes from your classmates, or you will just miss information. And I do love what he talked about, the long distance and short distance students. What does it mean? In his theory, those very top students in the class, like the ones who get the best grades, are often actually short distance students. What does it mean? They have this specific goal, for example, learn the material they have, right? Learn the scope they have, pass the exams with the highest score, and that's when they actually take a rest. Which is why very often the top students in the class are not the smartest in terms of like outlook and in terms of knowing a lot about different spheres, because there is a different type of students. Long distance, when they start researching something and it's actually not enough for them, they would start digging into other topics, they would start reading more. It's like lifelong learning, which is long distance. They are not satisfied with these short goals on the way, but they are more about gaining this knowledge, not just for the goal, for that mark, for that grade, for that, I don't know, honors diploma. And that is the difference. I do have to say, I've seen actually such a thing, experienced it within the classes, when the top students, they are actually like, they are good within the material that was taught, but they actually show no curiosity beyond that. And I would say their knowledge in other spheres was pretty limited. That's not to say that people who are top of the class or have honors diploma, I do have honors diploma as well, and actually that was a shock for me, because I never like took real track of my grades, because for honors diploma you have to have a certain level of grades. I never took track of that, so actually that was a surprise for me. There is such an interesting notion, and I like that he actually mentioned that that's something that truly exists. And actually, I don't think that one or the other is bad, because if you look from one point, you got honors degree, all your professors love you, you do achieve these small goals, you are not going beyond them, but not really everyone knows that, and this is actually sometimes sufficient to succeed in life. So I think this is about the choice. It's just about the level of satisfaction you can get while learning, while achieving something. Some people are more easily satisfied, or some people have just different goals, and everything is fine, but such notion exists. Culture matters. That's literally my friend when we passed the store with this slogan. My friend grew up in Shanghai, but he was also going to an international school. His level of English was like native level, and his knowledge of Western culture was, of course, maybe much deeper than the average person living in Shanghai, right? But at the same time, he still grew up in that Chinese culture, and we did have some misunderstandings in the beginning of our communication, and I guess at some point he just really got fed up with that. And when we passed the store, like the way he's read that slogan told a lot. It's like, it was actually a sentence of a person who was ready to give up with that culture difference and just, go anywhere. And I do think that sometimes makes sense. That's why communication is very often important. But in many Asian countries, people just don't communicate that much, don't communicate their feelings. Like Japanese or even traditional Chinese, Korean, they may behave in a certain way, which can actually make you feel that you don't understand them. But at the same time, they won't actually explain it to you, because that's just a cultural thing, being very slight, being very tolerant, being silent in some situations. Of course, that's generalization. Not everyone is like this, and there are always exceptions, but I'm talking in general. And of course, I noticed that it's actually extremely difficult to deal with people who are very traditional, who were exposed to foreigners not very often, because no matter how deeply you understand the culture, the feedback should be there. The person should be either open to explore new culture, or they're open to also share how he or she or they feel, how they want things to be. And if you watched my previous video, I was talking about this Japanese book, Butter, which concentrates both on murder and on food. And actually the way they describe food is on the level of French people, like tasting that rice with a piece of very expensive luxury butter, and they describe that this feeling of having it in your mouth is basically like falling. I was truly impressed by that. And you know what, today I made rice with butter and soy sauce, just exactly how that murderer, I'm not sure actually if she's a murderer because I haven't finished the book, but that's how she recommended the journalist to try and tell her how she would feel after having that meal. But what I'm talking about this is that the whole story started with a journalist visiting her friend who was already retired, and she wanted to bring something to her friend's home, which was butter, because friend needed that. And she couldn't find butter, so she bought margarine and all that stuff. And this conversation reminded me a lot about Ukrainian culture. Every time if we go to visit even a very close friends, we always would bring something, like some dessert, some snacks, some fruit. It just feels like you cannot just come to other person's place without anything, like without bringing anything, because that's kind of even impolite. Of course, sometimes very, very close friends can do that, but I still noticed that they would try to bring at least something small. And of course, when I came to Canada, I saw that such thing doesn't really exist here among close friends. Not even among close friends. Very often people actually don't do this. And that's definitely a very huge difference, because I think in China it works also the same way. You won't go to your friend's place just with empty hands. And here I just started thinking about friendship in general. And what I noticed that in Ukraine, if you are close friends with somebody, you are really close. You can discuss very private topics. You can actually even give advice to your friend, like life related advice. And I notice here in the West, actually people don't do this, at least Canadians. Their discussions are often very surfaceful. They would just, discuss social media, oh, what have you done, these small talk related things. And sometimes it makes me feel that there is actually no real friendship here that exists. People simply don't go to that level we go, for example, in Ukraine and even in China. I was able to make very close friends, and we would discuss relatively private topics or our dreams and aspirations, and that's something I noticed is lacking here. I would say the friendship in general is much more surfaceful. Can I whine a little bit? I really hate small talk. I don't like talking about literally nothing, especially when I don't want to talk. It's okay not to talk, actually. I think people shouldn't be embarrassed when there is silence or something. It's better than actually showing genuine interest in other person's life, to be honest. especially since you can't really share. You can just reply politely a couple of sentences, right? But again, I also can't complain because I know that this is just a culture difference, and culture, as you know, matters. See you next time.